Hello, this is Chaplain Paul. Decided to make a video. Don't really know how it's going to go, but I know what it's about. When you've witnessed horrors, unbelievable horrors, people that you love being treated horribly, you have a choice: either fight back or do nothing. Either you either say, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure this doesn't happen to somebody else, or you say, well, there's nothing I can do about it, so I'm just going to go about my life and try to forget about it. By doing the second thing, it's a slap in the face to everybody that came after you that were horribly treated. You're just turning around and walking away and allowing the same injustice to go on over and over and over again, thinking somehow it's going to get better. Well, these things don't get better. They get progressively worse. When I asked my elected officials on social media what happens when there's a complete breakdown of laws from the governor on down, laws and protections for a certain sector of society. What are we supposed to do as a state and a nation when laws are not being enforced, regulations are not being enforced? And I'm talking about federal constitutional laws, civil laws, patient laws, and human rights laws and regulations that are not being enforced, or they're not being fully enforced in certain areas, and they're flat out being ignored in other areas. There are federal laws that state that patients should not have to live in fear of being neglected, abused, and mistreated. Federal laws that say patients should be cared for and changed in a timely manner, not wait 2, 3, 4 hours all night long, like the patients that I've ministered to. There's federal laws that protect them. I spent the last some odd years running around in circles thinking that we have to go to our elected officials and try to persuade them into crafting laws that are going to protect these people, only to find out the laws already exist all the time. They already exist. They're being ignored. So the very people I'm going to and begging to write and craft laws to protect these people are so ignorant that they don't even know that the laws exist. Not only that, they have no idea that they took an oath of office to uphold and defend those rights, but they don't know that they exist in the first place, and they don't know that that's their responsibility in the second place. So what we have is, we don't have a government, a well-functioning government. What we have is a broken government. This whole system has failed. That means from the governor on down, Democrats and Republicans, everybody involved, the people that work in these facilities, own the facilities, and to write to us, because we're not actively involved in holding our elected officials accountable. So what did they do? When we're not there, they cave to the long-term care lobby and the long-term care industry. They caved to Big Pharma. They caved. And because we're not there to say, no, a senator, no, a congressman, you can't do this, because the end result is going to be horrific, with patients being raped and beaten to death by abusive staff and by other mentally ill, violent patients. Patients abused, neglected, and mistreated by the thousands each day, waiting hours to be changed. Sexually and physically abused, as reported in the Arizona Republic's series of reports, not just one report, but a series of reports, and uncovered in the Audit General's 2002 audit of our health services. And again, like a broken record, those reforms that are outlined in that audit have not been implemented yet. Why is that? What are we paying what are we paying you guys for? What are we paying our elected officials for? I mean, for God's sake, man, what are we paying you for? To just sit there and give us lip service and don't protect our loved ones, don't make Your primary job is to make sure that our government runs efficiently, that laws are enforced, and that people are protected. And in long-term care, it's not happening. It's almost like, well, I don't want to deal with that, so we're just going to deal with this other stuff because we don't. I don't have the stomach for it, and I can't handle that. So let's just put that off to the side and pretend it doesn't exist. And everybody says, yeah, okay, because I don't want to deal with it either. Because as soon as you dive in and start dealing with it, you know what's going to happen? The long-term care lobby, the long-term care industry, big pharma, and a lot of other powerful people and organizations are going to come around and say, well, if you do this, we're not going to support your reelection. As a matter of fact, we're going to smear you and you'll never run for office ever again. So what do? They cave. Oh, yeah, you're right. We don't want to do that. We don't want to upset the industry. Let's just let these poor people and these middle class and poor people and these nothings get raped and beaten to death because they don't have a voice and nobody's speaking out in their defense because we want to hang on to our power and our jobs. And we want to make sure that that money keeps rolling in and we get invited to all the fancy gatherings and get wine and dined by corporate and feel good about ourselves because we're helping to make them billions of dollars at the expense of the very people who elected you, who are literally living in hell. Okay? You guys don't go into these facilities. You don't tour the facilities. You don't have long-term care town hall meetings or public hearings addressing this issue. You don't have nothing. And when someone like me calls, your assistants answer the phone, and they're trained to just listen and give us lip service and make it look like that, well, you're doing everything you possibly can. You're doing everything you possibly can. It's like it's come down to such a disgrace. It's like, hey, you know what? That person's shoes are untied. You think you could tie them before they trip and fall down the stairs? Well, you know what? We have to have 5 committees to address this issue, and we're going to have to call in experts, and we're trying to do everything we can to tie that person's shoes so they don't fall down the hill or fall down the stairs. Meanwhile, they fell down the stairs 5 years ago and died. That's my patience. In my last video, I told you guys I got a call from the Arizona Long-Term Care Licensing Department from a surveyor that was investigating a complaint that I made. A complaint that I made 5 years ago. 5 years ago, this is our tax dollars at work. Why hasn't, and another thing, when I bring this up to them, not one responds. Not one. Not one says, Chaplain Paul, yeah, that's an outrage, and I'd like to get some information on that so I could contact the Arizona Long-Term Care Licensing Department and find out exactly where the breakdown was, because no complaint should have to wait 5 years to be respond to. 5 years. Okay, that's how long it took for our great health department to get off their butts and investigate a very serious complaint of patients, and it most likely was the complaint that I made that patients were the facility where I serve, one of them, they're out of compliance for 3 months. The Health and Human Services in Washington had changed the regulations where long-term care patients across the United States, if they have COVID, they were now allowed to have visits by clergy and family once again that are screened, come in by appointment, obviously. And they were allowed to have visits. Well, one of the facilities that I go, they're out of compliance for 3 months, not allowing visits. That's a violation of the patient's civil rights, constitutional rights, patient's rights, and human rights. And nothing happened until Chaplain Paul put my foot down and demanded that they allow those patients to be allowed visits. Otherwise, I was going to file a complaint, and that facility was going to be heavily fined. I was going to go to the media, and they, complied, and then they tore the whole thing down. The whole COVID unit was torn down. Well, why were they milking it? I mean, why were they doing this? Because that COVID unit probably gets 3 to 4 or 5 times the amount of money for the care in that COVID unit than the other patients. So they figure, well, we're just going to milk it as long as we can until some pain in the ass comes and tells us not to. Because after all, there's no laws, or they're not going to do nothing. They're going to give us a warning, and they're not going to do a damn thing. Because that's all they do. There's hardly ever any of these places closed down. There's no arrests of owners ever. The only time you have a situation where, like here, is an 85-year-old woman that was raped and beaten in the bed while sick and suffering. And then what happened? When she got up enough strength, she'd crawl on the floor and got to the staff office, and, by the kindness of their heart, the door was locked. The woman was yelling for help, and nobody helped her. There's no cameras. There's no nothing. You might as well be putting your loved ones in a third world, in a Turkish prison. That's what you might as well be doing. Because as soon as you go home, nights and weekends, there's far less staff and far more cases of neglect, abuse, and mistreatment. As soon as you leave there, it's, oh well, the call lights come on and the staff is over by the nurse's station looking at their cell phone. And then when they get around to it, they go down and they do their half-assed job. And most of the time, patients are waiting all night long to be changed. This is our society now. This is how we treat people that are most vulnerable, who can't defend themselves. We put them in these places and let them rot. And this is what's happening. So, what needs to be done? Well, here we go, broken Paul again, broken record, Pastor Paul. Needs to be town hall meetings, public hearings that subpoena owners and have staff, volunteers, clergy, experts, family members, patients by Zoom if they're too sick or too far away, and come in and testify and examine this situation and fix it. How are you going to fix it? Well, you got to elect people that have courage to stand up to the industry. See, our elected officials, they know how to deal with it. They know how to play the game. Do the minimum. Ignore your constituents, and only play up to those who have the most money and the biggest businesses and the most power, and just go and kiss their ass and forget about these type of issues. If this was 30 years ago, you all be kicked out of office. Matter of fact, you all be put in prison. You failed to protect these people. You failed to make sure that the laws that are placed, the laws that are placed to protect our loved ones, that are there to protect not thousands, millions of long-term care patients down through the decades, are now being mostly ignored and violated. And there's no mechanism of enforcement in these facilities. There's no mechanism. So in my other video, I said there has to be teams, not one team, teams, okay? 10, 20 teams that are comprised of one state official, one RN, 2 CNAs, to go in and do surprise inspections nights and weekends, walk those halls, and randomly examine the patients. Not examine every patient, randomly. And when patients are found to be in their soiled diapers for hours and have bruises and are able to communicate and say that they requested a CAT scan, they requested to go to the hospital for an evaluation because they fell out of bed and they want to make sure there's no fractures, they say that the staff is rude and manhandles them, abusive, that they are withheld medication if they speak out in defense of other patients, that a whole litany of tactics and things that they do in order to heighten the patient's anxiety, worry, doubt, fear, suicidal thoughts. Why? Because then comes the psych meds and antidepressants. And you see, the industry knows that you don't train the staff to be abusive. You have less staff. You train the staff that they're to not help the CNAs, and then you have less CNAs at night. So these poor people are stuck between a rock and a hard place. It takes 2 CNAs to change a patient. There's a lot of waste and a lot of you have to move the patient around. It's very difficult. And so you have 2 CNAs. Well, if you only have 2 CNAs on a floor with 60 patients, it's impossible to change all the patients. It's impossible. So they go to the RN, they go to other staff, and they say no. And so these poor people are between a rock and a hard place, and the turnover rate is very high. So they know less staff creates more an environment for more symptoms. More symptoms need more treatment. More treatment make more money. When back in the day you have a monopoly like this, you're supposed to have unions, and you're supposed to have other organizations that say, no, you can't do this. These are human beings. You can't be making millions of dollars a year off of these patients and provide horrible care that heightens their risk of dying because they are not getting proper medical care, not being fed properly, being neglected, abused, and mistreated. You have a recipe for a huge profit and a Holocaust. That's the end result. This is a disgrace. I know if I was an elected official, I'd bow my head in shame. I could not go out in public, okay, and remain silent about this. If I was an elected official, I'd be on the House and Senate floor daily. I don't care what the party bosses say. Sometimes you got to go against the grain in order to do what's right. All right, Martin Luther King. A man dies when he doesn't stand up for what's right. A man dies when he doesn't stand up for truth. A man dies when he doesn't stand up for justice. And we die on the inside. We literally waste away and die. And then he said, yeah, when you do that, you risk personal injury, great loss. You risk going to jail. You risk going to prison. You risk being run out of town. You risk a lot. You risk death. But he said it's better to go through life with a scarred up body than go through life with a scarred up soul, having done very little to reduce suffering in the world, standing up to the injustice of the world, standing up to greed of the world and evil of the world. So what are we electing nowadays? The bottom of the barrel. You're in there, you get the best health care the best health care our nation can afford for you and your family. As the patients that I love are sitting in their shit-filled diapers all night long, yelling for help, eating pig slop, unhealthy processed pig slop most of the time. Yes, there's salads and pancakes and other stuff, but it's mostly unhealthy processed pig slop that heightens a patient's, it slows our ability to heal, and it creates problems health-wise, and it affects our mental health. You're going to be eating unhealthy food, it's going to affect our mental health. And then here comes the psych meds and antidepressants, and everybody's happy, ring around the rosy, pocket full of posy, ashes, all the patients fall down. As the robber barons are running to the bank with millions of dollars. Pastor Sean's insurance paid $2 million a year. $2 million a year for this man to be treated like he's living in a crack house. All right, he had to have dialysis 2 to 3 days a week at $6,000 a treatment. The dialysis machines are on site. Why does it cost $6,000? It costs $6,000 a treatment because our elected officials are letting them get away with murder. You shouldn't be giving these places a license if they're going to soak the patients like this. Okay, the other thing is the food this poor man was fed was awful. At one point, we asked the nutritionist, yeah, I'd like to have that job. We asked her, can we get him kosher food because it's more healthier? You know what this woman did? She had the audacity to look, and I was in the room, look us straight in the face and say, yeah, there's a kosher deli down the street. I can get kosher food for him 2 days a week. She never did it. Lied right to our face. There was another woman, her name was Betty. She was an RN. Believe it or not, she was a patient. She's an RN. I went in the room. I was praying with her. She was in a lot of pain. The nurse came in, and Betty, the nurse said at some point, well, what do you want us to do for you? We've given you the maximum amount of painkillers. She says, I need an ambulance. She said she needs an ambulance. Hold on, I'm getting a phone call. Hi, I'm making a video. Can I call you right back? All right, bye. So she goes, I need an ambulance. Well, they didn't get her an ambulance. They didn't send her to the hospital. They refused to send her to the hospital for an evaluation. This was like, say, on a Thursday. I came back on a Tuesday. She died. How many patients that I love dearly die like that because of neglect, abuse, and mistreatment? So many I don't even know the number. People that I love dearly. Why do you think I'm doing this? You think I'm doing it because I like to make videos? I like to call our elected officials? You think I like doing this? No, I don't. It makes me want to vomit. Okay? It's a disgrace. And you all know it, and you all should be ashamed of yourselves. You need to do your job, make sure laws are enforced, make sure our loved ones are protected, and get real about this and have real hearings, public hearings, real town hall meetings, and demand that our loved ones be protected under the law, constitutional laws, civil laws, patient laws, and human rights laws, all violated. And what are you doing? Nothing. You're doing nothing about it. So let's get on the ball here, because we're all next in line at some point. And I'm here to tell you, it's a living hell on wheels. It's no way to have to live and suffer, and it's no way to have to suffer and die. So remember, Jesus loves you, and so do I. One day, we're going to breathe our last breath, and we're all going to go before the Lord. And you know what? I don't want to be that guy where he shakes his head and go, why didn't you do more when you had the chance, man? I put you in a position to help relieve suffering in the world, and you did the minimum instead of the maximum effort. Well, I don't want to be that guy, and you don't want to be that person. So do what you are elected to do. Enforce the laws. Make sure they are enforced. Make sure our loved ones are protected, and make sure that when it's our turn, that we are in a safe, affordable, well-run, well-staffed, compassionate, long-term care facility instead of what we have now, a living hell on wheels that mirrors a prison or a zoo. That's basically what we have. So remember, I got to go. Jesus loves you, and so do I. Take care.